on the time card, and I'll just use current time card as my time card for entering things. Um, the layout of the time card should be pretty obvious. We've got our 2-week payroll period. We've got all of our timesheet categories. And this is built based on those timesheet templates. So whenever I go to a new payroll period that I have never looked at before, it looks at my timesheet template and generates all of the categories that are in my timesheet template. As I move around the timesheet, which I can do using arrow keys, because that's one of my major beefs, is when I'm filling out a time card, I usually want to do it like I'm in Excel, not, click and click and click and endlessly reaching for the mouse. But as I move for the rows, keep your eye on this hint text down here, right? Because we talked about there's several different categories of timesheet rows. There's straight entry. And then when I switch to a different one, I have simple display mode, and it has different instructions as to how I should enter time into that cell. And then I can go down to ag activity, and it has yet another different message down here. So there's some hint text on the screen as to how you're supposed to enter time for things. So let's start with the first category, which is straight time entry, right? Vacation is just straight time entry. So if I took vacation today, I just hit 8 and enter. And that's now 8 hours saved on my time card. There's no save here. Every time I hit enter to register an entry on the time card, it automatically saves it to the database in the background. So today I've got 8 hours of vacation. This what we're doing here. This is vacation time for me. I know that Friday's a holiday, so I'll stick 8 hours on Friday. And that's pretty much it for straight time entry. You just basically type a number of hours into a cell.
Yeah, I was having trouble figure out that I could do that. I was trying to double click on it, and I was trying to hit a button and add new activity and that kind of thing, and couldn't figure that out. So
if I don't like clicking, if I'm a mouse person, I can just click in a cell and then click in another cell. However I prefer it. I generally prefer using the mouse. And down here, it'll say, Control Enter or start typing to edit. So in Excel, I'll try to follow Excel's conventions as much as possible. In Excel, if you hit Control Enter or F2 when you're on a cell, it will switch you to edit mode. And then you enter to exit edit mode. So it's kind of the same thing. One other thing that you can do when you're navigating onto these, in these straight time entries, I can't enter any additional information about this 8 hours of vacation, but if I hit R, I can type a remark. So for certain things like, for example, those new COVID categories, you might instruct your employees that they're required to enter a remark about that time entry. Let's see, this would have been, okay. So you can require a remark on straight time entry, but there's no other, you don't pick a program or a subprogram or anything like that. You will notice that it gets a little green highlight in the corner. Again, another sort of Excel type of thing. That just lets me know that there is a remark entered for that. And down here it says, I can double click or type R to edit remarks. So I can double click in that cell to get the remarks box, or when it's highlighted, I can just type R. Okay, so that's it for straight time entry. Let's go down to clerical direct, right? So it's a simple time entry. So it says Control Enter or double click to edit, right? So I can hit Control Enter, and that will pop up my simple tracking time entry. And
hey, this is all very cool. Barry and I, at least I was never able to figure out how to do any of this kind of stuff. So this is all very interesting.
Ah, good. Well, yes. Yeah, I need to work on the documentation some then.
Well, Barry and I are do it first, read directions afterwards kind of people.
Exactly.
Cool. Cool. Well, one other thing I may need to do is highlight this text a little more. It's kind of small and maybe people aren't seeing it. But that gives you the instructions for each of the cell types you're in. when I hop in here, it's automatically got me focused on the program. So I can, pick, this was, again, I'm entering direct clerical time. So I can say, okay, this is in the ag program and it was in pest detection, no contract, no location, 2.75 hours. And no miles, no expenses. And then I could enter multiple entries on this same form, right? So I can save that and hit add new and do weights and measures in the Weighmaster program. I did 1 hour. Okay, so why is that not? Okay. So I got my 3.75 hours in that cell. And, that's the summary of all the entries that I made for that day. If I control enter it, I'll get that same form back. Or, if I double click it, I'll get that same form back. So for everything except the straight entry, all the other time categories, there's more detail behind that cell, right? That cell is composed of specific entries that have more details on them.
Yes.
Okay, so that's straight simple time entry. Now let's go to custom, right? So we set up special projects. And let me just go look at our configuration again. Again, what controls each of those rows that we're seeing here and how the time's entered for them are these timesheet category configurations. So special projects is set up as a custom tracking, and we set it up so it's going to prompt you for these additional fields: units inspected, dollar value, sell by date, et cetera, et cetera.
So John, I do have a question on that one too.
Yep.
I unchecked underground storage tanks and above ground storage tanks, but they're still showing up in that drop down menu. Is that specific? Is that a reason for that, or has it just not been queried out yet?
It's something that we've been working on to eliminate those.
Okay.
I haven't looked at specifically why, but I've made the note. I'll make sure we look at it. When you inactivate a program, any time entry that you do after that inactivation date should not display those categories by default.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were going to say. I just noticed they were still in there, so I thought I'd say something.
Yep. Yeah, it's a ticket that one of our developers was working on up until last week. So, either we haven't rolled that change out to the test environment that we're in, or there's something wrong with it.
Okay.
Okay, so we configured this pesticide activity or not pesticide activity, special projects to be a custom tracking. And so when I go to that on my time card and do my control enter, let's go to Tuesday. Now I get a customized form that's based off of that configuration screen. Right, so I get my standard program, subprogram, contract, and then I get all those custom fields that I said I wanted to collect. So this could be pest detection, the contract. I inspected 3, dollar value of $25, et cetera. I can fill out this form. Now, if I try and save this, we're going to see that there are certain fields on here that are required. And which fields are required are also part of that configuration. So when I look at my special projects configuration in here, when I look at dollar value, for example, there's a checkbox to say whether it's required. So I can go into great detail on this particular, utility. It's super powerful because it means that you can pretty much track anything and you don't ever have to ask us to customize anything for you. This form, the hint text that shows up, whether it's required, the data type, and whether there's a lookup list that you want people to select from, that's all configurable by you.
So John, is there a way of configuring pesticide use for, say, pest management? I mean, the collection of chemicals used?
Yeah, although in pest management, there should be, well, let's come back to that when we talk about ag activity. You're talking about there's a free-form text field for products used in quantity.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's three of our timesheet entry types. We've got the straight entry where you just type the value into the cell. We've got this simple entry where you get a little form that's pre-cooked for you. You can do some customization on this form, like whether or not we're collecting miles and expenses and so on. But it's a pretty straightforward little form. Then you've got the custom form where you can build your own form and define what information you want to collect. And then we have two other timesheet row types. One is activity tracking, and the other is external tracking. So let's talk about the activity tracking, right? And that would be ag activity. Enter time on the appropriate daily activity form or inspection, and the same thing for weights and measures activity.
So are those brought in by a separate program like CalPATS?
No, ag activity and weights and measures activity are entered in CalCATS using the activity forms.
Okay, all right.
We'll go look at next. The only one that's brought in from CalPATS is
the pesticide activity. Yeah.
You see, this is external data, no editing allowed. That will just show up once it shows up. So if I want to get
let's go back to the ag activity. Sorry, I was distracted.
Yep. So if I want to get time in for ag activities, and by ag activities I mean reports 1 through 10, I'm going to go to my ag activities screen. Right. So I'm going to jump out of the timesheet, go to ag activities. I'm going to open it up in a separate tab because I like to be able to flip back and forth. So right now, as of this payroll period, I've got no ag activities. And what I want to do is I want to start entering my activity forms for this week. So I'll hit new activity, and let's say I'm doing nursery inspections. Actually, let me cancel that because Barry, you specifically asked about pest management.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is my report 3 pest management daily activity form. And I'll enter this form. This form is for a specific date, right? So this is for 6/29/2020. If I want to enter it for a different date, I'll just pick a different date here. So I'm actually going to enter this for Wednesday. Now, on any given day, I can only fill out one report 3 daily activity sheet for CDFA, but I can fill out another one for a different contract, right? So you've got a grant from someone. I'm not going to go any further with that because you guys, I don't think we're going to use that functionality right now.
Yeah, we aren't, but some counties, okay, so let's bring that one up for a second because there could be a county that has an oblong spurge contract and a tall white top contract or whatever, but all of those are going to want it subtotal up to the report 2. So, you could have a different report for these different contracts, but all of them are going to want to be reported to the CDFA report in the end.
Yep. And that's where we get into the the AFS mapping.
Yeah, we're not that fancy. We'll only ever have one contract at a time, but some big counties, or even like El Dorado County, will have 2 different contracts. One will be Forest Service, one will be CDFA.
Yep. And when they set up that contract, they'll flag the contract as to whether it's included with their CDFA time. So, whether that goes to the CMR or not. Because there are counties that have contracts that they don't report to CDFA. So anyway, there's the facilities in there for tracking all of that information. For you can, for the most part, just ignore these 2 entries here. So let's look at the form itself. The form is, these are copied off. I never really got a set of official forms from CDFA. So these are pretty much taken from the Santa Clara County daily system in terms of layout.
Yeah, it looks pretty close. I mean, I could give you the latest Excel spreadsheet that they made in 1998 or whatever, but this looks close enough.
So, that's one of the things that I'm getting feedback from counties on is some counties would like some additional fields entered here. But one of the things that's really key here is these rows that show up, right? These are not hard coded. Right? This list of weed species, pest species, vertebrate, pest species, bird species, rodents, these are all configurable by you for your county, right? Because you're not going to have the same weeds as Imperial County does. So again, let me jump back to our configuration screen. And if you look down here, you're going to find a species configuration screen. Right, so let me just blow it up and show all. So we have weed species, invertebrate species, bird species, rodent species, vertebrate species, and plant species. And you can control this. You can add species. You can delete species if there's no data entered for them. You can deactivate them if you want to stop using them. But every time I go to generate an activity form here, so for example, if I create this form and then tomorrow you deactivate, one of these species, it won't affect the form that I've already entered. It'll only affect new forms that I enter in the future. But these are totally configurable by you. So salamander and toad, they show up under pest species for vertebrates because they're configured as vertebrates in this screen. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. So
I think what Barry was getting to is like if you put in that you sprayed some Arundo and the herbicide we used was Roundup and we used 5 gallons.
Right.
That is not anything that tracks the herbicide in the amount, Barry. That's just a text field. Is that correct?
Well, yes, it looks like to me, but I was waiting for him to get through this form and then go a little further. But certainly that was what I was getting at.
This is because it's a single field that is is capturing the herbicide and the amount used. We don't have like a separate column for herbicide with herbicide names. So right now it's just
right. And we're not suggesting that you should at this point. This is something that the counties are doing it this way currently, but for Barry and other people that do a lot of this, you might find some interest in an enhancement, let's call it, in the future, where this herbicide and amount used would be 2 separate columns, and the herbicide would be a configurable drop-down menu that would, in the future, be able to track that. I'm not saying all counties would be interested, but probably about 8 of the counties probably would be very interested.
Yep. No, I totally get it. And I know that, it's going to come from 2 different sides. One is there are going to be counties that want to get that level of detail. And, it may be that at some point in the future, CDFA might want to get some additional detail on those things.
Right. So again, that's a future, that's definitely falls into the future category, but just know that is something that is a legacy of, the way that form was created, where 2 different things were put on one cell that should never have been. There should have always been herbicide and amount, should have been two different columns, but because of the way it was done back when it was done, it was all put in one thing, so it became a text entry.
Yep.
Well, we're also dealing with paper forms too.
Right.
We inherited all these things. So.
Well, I mean, really, I don't know. There's, what's the statewide soft program?
CARTS?
No, not their time program. Their
Dr. B
program.
ERBS or AIRS 2?
AIRS 2, yeah. I looked at AIRS 2 a very long time ago, and I don't know if they ever went and did some of those things like creating a separate column and a lookup list for herbicides and stuff like that.
No, they didn't. And part of that is I actually did use all of those programs when I was in Calaveras. The program really only existed for about 4 years.
Yep.
And because they had 2 different competing products that were being used at the time, Equimetrics, RMMS, or whatever they were. You know, it didn't never really got expanded and developed fully.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it's an unbelievable investment of.
It was, but they were kind of caught in a catch-22 because, you know, they weren't going to support and expand a program that wasn't used by a lot of counties. But the counties that didn't want to use it didn't want to use it because it didn't have the functionality they wanted. So it was, you know, I felt bad for the program. We used the program for several years. We liked it, but it failed from essentially that point where it didn't have enough functionality for all the counties. So all the counties didn't want to do it. And then every couple of years, you know, one county would drop out or whatever, and it never had. It died from attrition.
Well, their synchronizing capabilities in it were a real challenge. So,
hey, back in 1999 or whatever, when it was first used, that was pretty much cool. You'd bring your computer in from the field, you'd plug it in, it would charge, it would synchronize. That was state of the art back then.
Right. Yeah. Well, we're also talking about, you know, essentially an access program where synchronizing means some administrator having to merge all of the access databases together.
yeah. Guess who that was here in Amador.
Yep. Yeah. Hey, it was a challenge, but that was, you know, that was the best technology available back then. And so one of the things that's hard to keep up with is, you know, changing technologies. Okay, so I'm not sure what's going on here, but for some reason, you know, of course, this being the first time I try to demo the system live to someone, there was always weird things that happen. And one of the weird things that happen is it's not letting me enter any hours or anything into any of these fields. So
you want to just pick a different ag activity, or you want to go to like one of the PUE activities or something?
Well, I was just trying out some of the other ag activities, and I think it's, you know, more of a systemic issue. So what I'm going to do is hop over to some existing entries that I've got.
Is that the timesheet that you closed or submitted to the supervisor?
No, because that was, I went and looked at that. Timesheets in progress.
So John, I'm on the timesheet also on my other screen here, and as I go into timesheet, I'm getting alerts something went wrong.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what date I go to. It's just everything's locked up. So anyway, I'll get that sorted out. But let me look at some existing. So when I do, let's go to time in February. So when I do enter ag activities, they show up on my time card automatically. And if I double click on that cell, then I'll see the specific activity records that I've entered. So when I go to my ag activities screen, you'll see I've entered on the 19th, I've entered 2 pest detection forms. On the 20th, I've entered a pest detection and ag inspection. So this is what the form looks like with, you know, all the time entered. And this is what Steph was mentioning. Once I have my timesheet approved or in review, I can't make any changes to these forms, right? Because they show up on an approved timesheet. So I can't make any changes to this because it's already been approved. Now, just so we can illustrate what's going on here, I want to put this back into in progress. And then I'll go hop back in and take a look at that form again. So, you know, this is what the data entry form normally looks like. You can enter values in all of your fields, hit the save button. In the event that you do have multiple entries for a day, right? So on February 19th, I filled out 2 pest detection daily activity forms. One is for CDFA, one is for, you know, a special contract that I have. But this is where I enter hours and activity tracking for reports 1 through 10. And whenever I enter one of these here, it automatically shows up on my timesheet under the ag activity row. Okay, so is that making sense?
Yes.
So you see I've got, on the 20th, I've got pest detection, ag inspection. And then the same thing will go for a weights and measures activity. As you fill out your weights and measures activity, basically your weights and measures inspections, the time on those inspections will roll up to your weights and measures activity row. And when you double click on that row, you'll get a list of all the inspections you did on that day.
So we've actually clicked on some of the weights and measures stuff, and it's not doing anything right now.
No, there's nothing in there for weights and measures right now.
Yeah, so when do we anticipate those things coming online to be able to, I'm not saying do them out in the field necessarily, but at least be able to track the time, put in weights and measures?
Yep, they're going into beta test next week.
Okay.
And hopefully we don't find a whole lot, changes required in them, so they'll be rolled out to production a week or two after that. So before, right around the middle of July or maybe a little third week in July.
Oh, okay, cool. A lot quicker than I was originally told. Awesome.
Yeah.
Because essentially what we would like to be able to do is, we're going to start wanting to use this in July.
Yep.
But we're going to double entry everything into what we're currently using and then into this. And then at the end of the July, we would like to be able to print those monthly reports, print some timesheets, because until you have data in, it kind of, it doesn't really make sense and it doesn't really work. You actually have to have, in my opinion, kind of a month's worth of data in order to start printing out your sheets and your reports and stuff.
Yep, totally agree. Totally agree. And I'm very happy that you're doing that because, like you say, we've been doing this in a vacuum for 6 months. And even when you have people entering test data, you don't find a lot of stuff until people are really entering real data and then comparing it. So